Hello, my name is Vincent Creel, Public Affairs Manager for the City of Biloxi. I'm here to deliver today's Be Prepared report. This is recorded on Saturday, May 2, 2020 at 2:20 in the afternoon. The Mississippi State Department of Health, which reported a record 397 new cases of the coronavirus on Friday, says that there have been 229 new cases of the virus reported in the past 24 hours throughout the state. There have also been 10 deaths attributed to the coronavirus in the past 24 hours. This chart shows the statewide totals over the past 14 days. In Harrison County, 4 new cases were reported in the past 24 hours. This chart shows the downward trajectory that we've seen for more than 14 days. In Jackson County, no new cases were reported, and 5 new cases were reported in Hancock County. 1 person died from the coronavirus in Jackson County in the past 24 hours. Tonight will be the last night of the curfew in Biloxi. No one should be on the streets after 11 o'clock tonight. The curfew ends at 5 a.m. Sunday until further notice. Keep this in mind. Governor Reeves said that when he woke up Friday morning, he had hoped to announce later in the day the easing of some of the restrictions in his executive order. Then the Friday numbers came in. Almost 400 new cases reported in 24 hours. On that same Friday, Mayor Gillich released the Biloxi plan, called Opening Up Biloxi Again. The mayor is not proposing to open any new businesses that are closed under the governor's order. What the mayor does want to see happen is that when the governor gives the okay, businesses and customers are aware of the new playing field. To those retailers and others who are already open, as allowed under the governor's order, and to those who go inside a Biloxi business, please follow the guidelines that the mayor has outlined. If you are a Biloxi business that is awaiting the governor's okay to open, we ask that you familiarize yourself with these guidelines and make them part of your reopening plan when that day arrives. The public needs to know that we're all taking prudent and responsible precautions. The public also needs to take prudent and responsible precautions and to make good decisions. You can see the guidelines for opening up Biloxi again online now on the city's website. Everybody in Biloxi will see them in their mailbox midweek. For the record, please remember, the governor currently has an executive order in place. It's called Safer at Home. It allows the opening of some retail at 50%. 50% of your fire capacity. The city has also issued its guidelines for safety for retailers as well as hoteliers. Restaurants can only offer takeout or delivery. Dining rooms, even outdoor dining, is not allowed under the governor's executive order. That's the report today. We'll see you here again tomorrow. On behalf of Mayor Gillich and the members of the Biloxi City Council, we say God bless you and God bless Biloxi. Earlier this week, we saw the planes from Keesler fly over the medical facilities as a salute. They flew over our own Merit Health here in downtown Biloxi. We leave you today with a salute to the men and women of Keesler Air Force Base, or as Mayor Gillich likes to say, our Keesler cousins. Here is the story of Keesler Air Force Base, which is also the story of Biloxi.
Mississippi was a very different place 75 years ago. In the late 30s, the average household income was right around $1,000 annually, and most were lucky to have that after the last decade of depression, dust bowls, and prohibition. Biloxi fared well during these times thanks to its seafood industry, which shielded the coast from the worst effects of the Great Depression. By the mid to late 30s, even the seafood industry had slowed to a crawl, and Biloxi desperately needed an economic shot in the arm. With the nation gearing up for war, local and state government were able to convince Washington to designate a new training base in Biloxi. What had been a makeshift airport, a Navy shipyard, a golf course, and private land totaling 40% of Biloxi's landmass was sold to the U.S. government to form what became the Army Air Corps Station No. 8 in 1941.
The streets were either just sand or those that were built up for the heavy foot traffic was covered with fresh oyster shells from the oyster plants in Biloxi. And in the morning, we might get a little shower. And in the afternoon, when the hot 90-degree sun came out, the stench from those oyster shells was sickening. We didn't look forward to that at all, especially when you were going to the mess hall. By the time you got to the mess hall, why, you'd lost your appetite.
In the early days, buildings were constructed, and Army Air Corps Station No. 8 was growing fast. By August 1941, the first group of recruits arrived for basic training, and by September, the Airplane and Mechanics School began its operation.
The school didn't have classrooms yet. The hangars were under construction, and the class was held in tents. In fact, I remember one large tent that they had commandeered from a circus, I think, and the classrooms were in it. I was in a smaller tent with my group of people, and it was on the where the marina is now. No grass, strictly sand, very few trees, and if we lost a tool during the day, when we inventoried our toolbox to turn back into the tool crib in the evening, we had to dig around in the sand and stay there until we found that tool. Otherwise, we would answer to somebody for losing a tool.
Army Air Corps Station No. 8 was designated Keesler Field in honor of 2nd Lieutenant Samuel Reeves Keesler, Jr., a Mississippi World War I war hero. Keesler grew up in Greenwood, Mississippi, and fought in World War I as an aerial observer with the Army Air Service. He was killed in 1918 after his plane crashed behind German lines. It was customary to name bases after fallen war heroes from the era, and 2nd Lieutenant Samuel Reeves Keesler, Jr. was a perfect fit. Shortly afterwards, the United States was thrust into World War II with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Throughout World War II, Keesler churned out mechanics and technicians by the thousands to help in the massive air presence during the foreign campaigns in Europe and beyond. Many of the graduates went right into teaching far and wide, so Keesler was directly responsible for the growth of air power during that era. The Air Force became its own branch of the military in late 1947, and in January of 1948, Keesler became an official Air Force base. Shortly after, Keesler was designated an Air Training Command installation. After the war, Keesler had proven itself as a training mecca and took charge of the radar school and radio operations. By the early 1950s, Keesler shifted his focus away from airplane and mechanics courses and focused more on training and technology.
I was greeted to Open Bay Barracks, which we had at basic military training, because they had not completed the triangle at that time. So we did what they called in those days backlocked for about 3 weeks. That was additional duties, everything from Ship Island 1 week, building everything, to anything on the base that they needed, because we were self-contained. There was no contractors. We had to do it all, clean the yards, pull KP, feed, do all of that. So that was the big difference. And then later we got moved into the triangle area where it was a little more comfortable.
The growth of Keesler was impressive. Large building projects like the Triangle Housing Project were solidifying Keesler's place in the Air Force. By now, Biloxi had embraced Keesler and began to feel the positive economic impacts it had on the community.
This was a raucous area. I'm telling you, they had a lot going on in Biloxi. They had nightclubs, they had joints outside the gate. We always had to go in uniform and have a pass, and you had to check in on time, but there was a lot going on in Biloxi. You ride the buses, and it was more or less segregated. You sometimes in the front, sometimes in the back, but it was a totally different thing. And Keesler was a mainstay for Biloxi, a mainstay.
With control tower and radio operator courses in the late 50s and the major addition of personnel and administration courses in the 60s, Keesler had its highest student load to date. By the mid-60s, Keesler had become known as the electronics hub of the Air Force.
No matter who you are, from where you may have come, whether officer, airman, civilian, or representative of a foreign government, as you travel along Mississippi's Gulf Coast, past the historic Biloxi Lighthouse, you have one thing in common. You are nearing the Electronics Center of the Air Force, Keesler Air Force Base, to join the student rank. From basic training, you remember tests, hundreds of questions, an interview, and the results showed you had the aptitude to become an electronics technician.
Thanks in large part to the space race of the 60s, Keesler was utilizing technology and techniques that required significant computing power and safe, air-conditioned structures to house them. Cody, Bryan, Jones, Hughes, and Maltby Halls were state-of-the-art training facilities erected at that time to replace the many smaller World War II-era buildings that dotted the base. As the lengthy campaign in Vietnam was winding down, Keesler offered ample opportunities for the large number of troops coming home to lead young airmen and train the future of the Air Force.
I bought a car while I was over there, station wagon.
Over where?
In Vietnam.
Okay.
You could buy it, and it's waiting for you in San Francisco. And of course, that was good because I got off the airplane, got the car, and drove out. So I didn't have anybody throwing stuff at me or anything, because those were still the years we were bad guys.
Biloxi was very welcoming to its returning war heroes due to Keesler's tight integration into the community, a large retirement home, a VA hospital, and all the continued community services they offered.
You quickly learned that it really was a pleasure to be here, and that the people accepted you and helped you, especially if you'd never had a desk job before.
Soon after Vietnam, furthering Keesler's already technological image, Keesler housed tenants from the 1st Aerospace Cartographic and Geodetic Squadron, the 920th Tactical Airlift Group, the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron, and the 7th Airborne Command and Control Squadron. This time in the 70s ushered in the iconic era of the C-130s, which Keesler is still known for today. Throughout the 80s, Keesler kept up with the rapid pace of technology by creating prototype interactive video discs, which eventually spread government-wide as a standard teaching aid. As the 80s came to a close, so did the decades-old threat of global nuclear war, with the collapse of communism and the iconic dismantling of the Berlin Wall. As a result of the Air Force's drawdown after the Cold War, Keesler was able to absorb courses in weather forecasting, meteorology, and precision maintenance electronics laboratory training. At the same time, the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing, redesignated the 81st Training Wing, was relocated to Keesler and became our host organization.
The dormitory life was new to me, so I didn't think good or bad of it, but it was a very large horseshoe-like facility, 3 stories, multiple entry points, just bare tile floors that we had to polish, and everything had to stay clean and tidy, courtyards to just kind of mull around in or do PT in. But it was not a very high-tech, awe-inspiring, you're in the greatest Air Force type of environment.
With so much emphasis on classrooms and technology, dormitory housing had gone unchanged for over 4 decades. The Triangle Vision project was implemented to update and condense the 50s-era training dormitories to the modern age. The resulting buildings were advanced, spacious, and secure. Early in the 21st century, the United States was attacked on September 11th, which changed the course of history. Patriotism grew afterwards, and enlistment into the armed forces was revived. Keesler stood ready to train the future airmen to go out and defend our country from the ever-growing threat of terrorism.
Well, Katrina was absolutely the most devastating storm I've ever seen. I've been in 23 years of military, 2 wars, 38 countries, and probably a dozen hurricanes and typhoons. I've never seen anything like this.
There's an old caddy. This is old now. Old fire. That howling is what you hear. The wind going around.
Keesler and the whole Gulf Coast was rocked to its core in late 2005 by Hurricane Katrina. While Keesler had fared well in the storms of the last century, Katrina caused close to $1 billion in damage to the base alone. Even with such a heavy blow to the base, airmen poured into the local communities to help the city that had embraced them for so long.
Today's facilities are amazing. When I came back after Katrina and saw the kind of dorms our airmen are living in, I couldn't believe it. We have entry control. Everybody is internal to the facilities. You don't have to worry about external threats. Everything is just modern. We have cameras now. We have alarm systems. We have all kinds of things to ensure their safety so they can just focus on their airmanship and their technical training.
Keesler bounced back following the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. Major renovations to almost every structure were completed. Keesler now has stunning new on- and off-base housing, a new state-of-the-art commissary and exchange, new dorms, and a luxurious Bay Breeze event center. Just a few years after its devastation, Keesler won the coveted Air Force Installation Excellence Award and received $1 million for standard of living upgrades. The future of Keesler is bright. Technology and innovation continue to be cornerstones for the Air Force, and Keesler stands ready to teach and train the next generation of airmen.
As a military training instructor, we receive men and women, all ages, all walks of life. They come to us to basic military training at Lackland Air Force Base. And from that very first minute, we start laying that foundation of our core values, Air Force core values, teamwork, leadership from the very beginning. It starts from the beginning, but throughout all the 8.5 weeks, we need every minute of it. And it's all important. From the basics of drill, it's teaching teamwork, and we're relaying that to them. Yes, we are marching around and learning different drill movements, but also it's teaching you how to be a team and teaching you how to react to different commands at any time. Our main goal is we want them to become motivated, capable airmen after 8.5 weeks. So when we send them off to technical training, they're still motivated, they're still ready to go, and they hit the ground running at whatever base they go to for their next skill. And MTLs grab them, and they harness that energy, and they just continue on.
What we're finding is that these airmen, they really truly want to be driven by something greater than themselves. They want to be a part of a team. And when we get this airman from basic military training, our main goal is, yes, to reinforce those standards, but also help them identify as that thing that's bigger than themselves. We know what the core values are. They learn them, but sometimes they might just be words to them in basic training. And how do we help them tie the true meaning and give them stories of this is what integrity looks like, this is what service looks like. And what they see is my MTIs weren't just the example, my MTLs are now the example. And then what the hope is that our first duty station supervisors are the example. So the MTLs bridge the gap between how we get this airman into a structured environment, and then now we put them in an opportunity or an environment where they now have to make decisions that are going to set them up for success in their future. And so the role of MTL is pivotal, right? I mean, we have to be the ones that are ultimately caring about that airman and their long-term success as well, and that's a blessing beyond words. Hopefully, if in the MTL schoolhouse, if we train them right, they're going to go out there and they're going to get after it with the right mentality of taking care of an airman and knowing the impact that they can truly have.
And these are the airmen MTIs and MTLs deliver to the operational Air Force.